Arch Advocate Show, welcome back. Thank you so much for tuning in. Please hit subscribe if you have not already. There should be a subscribe button, and if there is not, please let me know. You can go on to my website, archadvocate.com, arch-advocate.com. Send me an email, like listener Bryce Warbenek, who wrote in and said, amongst many other things, he wrote me and had some really good questions, and things like, do you believe America landed on the moon? Yes, I do. Please send me your film on the refugee camp. I've been waiting to ask you this. It's actually, I put it back on my my YouTube channel, Arch Advocate, on YouTube, and it's kind of, I don't know, you have to go back a couple weeks. It says the truth about refugees. It's actually my very first edited piece, even though it falls out of time. I took it down once. But when I started doing the Cryptocurrently podcast, I took that video down because it didn't fit the narrative. But I put it back up. This rape fund that Congress passed, what are your sources? You mentioned the Tim Preuss podcast. Do you have the bill name or anything? Yes, I do. I need to look that up, and I will get that back to you. But anyways, listen, when you send me an email, I read them. And with the exception of this particular one by Bryce, I'm going to read it, on the air unless you tell me not to. But I'm actually going to have Bryce on the show because he asked some very poignant questions. Listen, one thing, there's something going on that I don't know, like I try to hit it as bluntly as I can, but yet I still feel like it's coming across like I'm alluding to it. But I'm not. Listen, have you ever, okay, you know how like when you get into an argument with somebody and like you hit them with a fact that they can't ignore, right? That's just absolutely, it's just a glaring, stark fact, and their response will be, well, that's different, right? Well, that's different. And there's a really funny thing about that. Give me just a second, all right? Follow me. Atheist, listen, follow me, all right? Everybody is religious. Everybody. You too, atheists. Oh, no, I'm not no, that's different because in a religion you need a deity and a book. No, to be a theist, you need a deity and a book. To be religious, you have to have a pulse. Everybody is religious. Everybody has things about their life that are a set pattern, a set pattern of beliefs that they believe to be true and to be superior. That's religion, right? So there was this on the Red Elephants Facebook page. They posted this. There was this rabbi, right, a Jewish rabbi, who was protesting the building of the wall on our southern border. This was recently, right? So this is a Jewish rabbi protesting a wall. Don't lose the irony, all right? Because there's the thing that keeps Israel safe is a gigantic wall, right? I mean, sorry. The thing that keeps Israel safe is the Almighty God. And one of the things that evidently God has told those people to do is build a gigantic wall which keeps them relatively safe. And so on this video, these people are asking him, well, wait a minute, like, so you're, as a Jewish rabbi who has obviously been to Israel, has obviously been to Jerusalem, you're going to stand here and say you don't understand why there's the need to build a wall. And what does he say? You know, because he's, and the person asking him is saying, like, well, there's a wall surrounding Jerusalem, you know, like, what's your problem here? And what does he say? Well, that's different. Well, that's different, right? Well, of course it's different because now we're talking about your bullshit. So of course it's different. Well, no, it's different because this wall that has not yet been built is on the continent of the Americas, and the wall that we're talking about is in Asia. So obviously, those two things are different. Asia Minor and the Americas are different places. Therefore, it is different. That's different. You see what I'm saying? Well, the Palestinians, like, they attacked the Jews because of different religious purposes, and the drug cartels attack the United States for money. So that's different. You see what I'm saying? It's the cop-out. It's like the ultimate cop-out. If you can find any difference whatsoever, then that gives you license to say, well, your argument is invalid because it's different. Well, guess what, everybody? Everything is different. Everything's different. But everything is also, you know what I mean? There's a lot of things that are the same. And when it comes to like the human experience, right? There are differences, but there's a lot of similarities. There are a lot of things that are exactly the same, right? Here's a good one. Like if you wake up in the morning and decide not to have, a nutritious breakfast, some scrambled eggs, glass of OJ, take your vitamin, your multivitamin, drink some water, right? If you decide to forsake all of that and just crush 2 donuts and wash it down with a cup of coffee, guess what? You're going to have a sugar imbalance very quickly, and it's going to make you feel like you've been hit by a truck. Now, if you go to India and find a little Indian dude and feed him the exact same breakfast, do you think he's going to have the exact same experience? Okay, well, do you think that is a cultural difference or a biological difference? Or a cultural similarity or a biological similarity that is therefore like a necessity? It's like, you see what I'm saying? Like there's certain things about living your life that are the same no matter where you go. And religious expression, not theological expression, but religious expression is the same. And you can better navigate your own life if you understand that there's things about you, even if you're an atheist, that are religious, right? Some of them are good, but some of them are stupid, right? Like in Christianity, like my whole, the one thing I desire the most is to aid in the process of rescuing Christianity from the Christians, right? I don't worry about atheists. I don't worry about Muslims or Jews or Mormons or Jehovah's Witnesses. I don't worry about any of those people, right? My concern is for the church because there's some things about it that need fixing, right? Like in Christianity, there are many people. I have no idea as to the percentages or whatever. There's a lot of people who have converted to Christianity because they were told that if they did not, they would go to a very bad place, commonly referred to as hell. And in hell, it's a fiery furnace where you burn for eternity. Sounds horrible, doesn't it? And the reason that they confess Jesus Christ as their Lord and Savior is so that they could avoid going to the bad place when they die. And if they did, in fact, convert to follow Jesus Christ, that when they die, they get to go to the good place. So the whole premise of their spiritual beliefs has to do with what happens in the afterlife, right? Now think about the logic of that. We don't know anything about the afterlife. There's been a couple of people that said that they went there and came back. I don't believe a single one of them, but we don't have any justification for any sort of science behind believing one way or the other whatever it is that you believe about the afterlife. But there's a lot of Christians who are like, no, I converted because, man, some dude came along and said, hey, listen, there's this place called hell. And then they described hell and they said, look, if you don't want to go there, here's what you got to do. Jesus Christ, God himself, came down and took human form and was crucified so that you could accept him, so that you would not have to go to hell when you die. And there's a lot of people that are like, oh man, I better do this because I don't want to go to the bad place. There used to be, in San Diego, well, in Southern California, there's a preacher named Greg Laurie, and Greg Laurie has this kind of crusade every year, if you will, called the Harvest Crusade, where he goes town to town and he fills up stadiums, and there's a whole bunch, there's a whole lineup of preachers that come, big name preachers, and thousands of people go, and then at the end there's an altar call, and people go up and they either renew their resolve to follow after Jesus, or they come for the first time or whatever. And there's commercials, like before Harvest comes to San Diego, there's commercials on the radio, right? If you listen to the radio. And there's people, like there's little kids, like, 15-year-old kids in this commercial that are like, yeah, I went to Harvest Crusade and I just decided by the end that I don't want to go to hell when I die, so I went forward and gave my life to Jesus. And it's like, that's on the commercial. Like, this is the thing that this very popular, very wealthy, very influential group of Christians, they're proud of that. They're so proud of this accomplishment that this is what is on their commercial, which running radio commercials, very expensive. Right? Now hold on a second. Now, I have a huge problem with that. Like, when I listen to Christians talk like that, it's like, oh, so you don't really, like, you don't see the Christian walking in the way as something that is to be applied to this life. This is a get out of hell free card for you. No, there's no wonder why there are so many Christians walking around with empty experiences. They've never, like, they cannot talk about, like, the face of God and coming in contact with the Almighty and using the Father's heart towards us to navigate this life. They can't talk about that because they're not grounded in anything other than the afterlife, which, by the way, in our holy book, it's talked about very, very little. We have very little to go on when it comes to the afterlife in the Holy Scriptures, right? Now, so think about that. Think about that as a religious thing, right? Like, that's a deeply religious concept. I come along and I tell you, hey, listen, there's a place called hell, and if you recite these magic words, when you die, you won't have to go there. In fact, you're going to go to the good place, where there's streets paved with gold and food everywhere and whatever, right? Now, take that as a religious concept. Now, atheists, don't do well, that's different. Of course it's different, sweetie. Now listen, global warming, right? Well, there's this stuff called, carbon monoxide, and it's very bad for the environment. It kills everything. It's, if you were to sit in a garage with a car that was running, like, it would kill you. It's deadly. It's deadly poison. And if we don't fix the problem of the fact that we're pouring carbon monoxide into the atmosphere, we're all going to die. But here's the good news. Like, if you believe what I tell you, then, the whole thing will be fixed. And you'll get to have the right set of, you'll be in the crew, you'll be in the gang of the people who have the right beliefs. And if you do this, then we're going to save the planet, and we'll all get to live on, right? But it's like, oh, wait a minute. Just like in Christianity, it's like, well, wait a minute. Let's back up here just a second. You're saying there's a bad place and I can avoid it if I just say these words and believe what you believe. Well, we skipped over a huge portion. It's like, let's talk about this hell thing for a second. You said there's a hell. Where is it? Oh, well, the Bible says it's in the center of the earth. No, it doesn't. No, it doesn't. The Greeks said that Hades, which is also a word that Paul used when he was describing the afterlife to the Greeks, right? Paul came along to the Greeks and said, hey, there's this bad place that you can go when you die, and it's hot, and there's worms, and it's awful. And the Greeks were like, oh, you mean Hades? Paul was like, what? Well, Hades, the god of the underworld. What you just described is that's what we believe. It's called Hades. And Paul said, well, I intend to be all things to all people. So you call it Hades, we'll call it Hades then, if that's what works for you, right? But when preachers come along and they start talking about, you're going to go to hell because that's the place for the bad people, it's like, okay, slow down. This hell thing, what are you talking about? Well, it's in the center of the earth. Okay, well, where other than Paul talking about that to the Greeks and conceptualizing that to the Greek, why do you believe that that's the case? I'm not Greek. I'm not a pantheist. I don't believe in Hades. And if you're a Christian, you should not believe in Hades. That's not what we believe. What other proof do you have that there's this place called hell and it's in the center of the earth? Right? And King David wrote, like, even if I went to hell, I would still be confident in my God, because my God is the God of everything, no matter where I go. So how do you reconcile that? Let's talk about hell, sir, for a minute. What are the qualifications of going there? Right? You get them cornered in that. It's like, wait a minute. Let's talk about hell for a second. You just told me there's a place called hell and that it's awful, and then you skipped right past it and said, listen, you can avoid going there if you do what I tell you to do. It's the same thing with global warming. Oh, there's this stuff called carbon monoxide, and if you let me tax you to death, then you'll be in the group of the good people. It's like, wait a minute. Carbon monoxide? What do you mean? Is that bad? Is there proof that it's a planet killer? Well, of course there's proof. You know what I mean? Like, well, wait a minute. How come every time a volcano goes off, it doesn't kill everything around it? Right? Why isn't it that, like when that one in Iceland went off a couple of years ago, or wherever that happened, Iceland, Greenland, whatever, why didn't that kill the entire portion of the planet that volcano was on? You know what I mean? It's like, well, sure, if you put your face in the mouth of that volcano, yeah, you're going to die. Yes, carbon monoxide will kill you if you sit in a garage. But there is no scientific proof that carbon monoxide is anything other than a necessity for this planet, because volcanoes erupted, and you know what I mean? Like, there's been volcanoes the entire, world history. It's like, dude, you skipped right over it. You did exactly what religious people do, what Christian people do to convince people to conform to their way of thinking. You told me there's this awful gas that's going to destroy the planet, and if we don't have the right system of beliefs, that there's this superior concept called nature. It is superior to us, and it is going to punish us with death. It's very religious. That's different. No, it's the exact same thing. The exact same thing. The reason you were told, and I know that you were told this because I was told this. In my lifetime, I was told that the planet is not warming. In fact, it's cooling. Global cooling. And then all of a sudden it changed to global warming. And then all of a sudden it changed to climate change. And then Al Gore made $500 million. And then people started listening to Leonardo DiCaprio as their, you know what I mean, as their priest. You don't see that as being religious in nature? You've done it, atheist, or Christian, or whoever you are. It doesn't matter. It's a religious thing. And the reason that happens is because we all have something in us that needs to practice religion. We need it. And the fact that we all need it. You see, listen, atheists all the time. You say, listen, your religion is atheism. It's not a religion. That's different because we don't have a deity or a book. It's like, well, you have priests and you do have books. And your deity is a non-deity. Your deity is like we have a supreme being, you have a supreme concept, nature. You can't give it a name because you don't regard it as being, cerebrally or like intellectually independent, right? As a deity is, but you still regard nature as being superior to you and capable of punishing you for having the wrong beliefs. And this thing that we're seeing, the reason I bring all this up is like this bizarre behavior that we're seeing in people nowadays. These people who claim to be atheists, they claim to be like the enlightened people, the people who transcended religion. It's like, dude, you are very religious. These people are willing to die and kill other people in the name of their beliefs, of their ideology. Just like, emerging religions do. And you think, like, listen, you try to point things out to people. Here's a really funny thing. And this is just like, listen, I make a lot of fun of Christians. Right? There's a lot of things in Christianity that I point at and laugh. And I am a Christian. I am a follower of Jesus Christ. This is what I believe. This is where I put my faith in my life. Right? But I look around at Christianity and I think, man, you guys, so you converted to Christianity so you wouldn't have to go to some place that may or may not be made up. And no wonder you have absolutely no depth to your Christian walk as you walk through this life, because you don't regard it as being important to this life. You're just trying to get out of something that somebody sold you about the next life. You know what I mean? But there's other things that go on in Christianity where it's like, dude, that's just like, that's dumb. That's dumb. It's not scriptural. It's, you know what I mean? Like, there's no reason for you to believe this, but it just, you got swept up in the fad. Altar calls. I mentioned this before on another podcast, like altar calls. That's a very new trend in Christianity. That never happened before. There was never a thing called an altar call. You never saw Jesus saying, hey, if you want to accept me, come forward. I'm going to pray with you. I'm going to lay my hands on you, and then you'll be saved, and then none of that. That's a brand new thing, and you can pretty much thank Billy Graham for that. Billy Graham, who I love. Loved. He's dead now. Rest in peace, Reverend. But here's another thing. Like, did you know, take Mormons, for example, right? I love Mormons because they're very nice people. They're like, it's probably the nicest, as far as the demographic of religion goes. Like, those are pretty much the nicest people there are, right? You go to Salt Lake and you will see a very family-oriented people. Did you know that Joseph Smith wrote that there were Quakers living on the moon? That's right, you heard me. Quakers, right? Like the guy on the front of the Quaker oatmeal box, Quaker that, who was it? President Nixon was a Quaker, right? Quakers were living on the moon. I can't remember what else he said. They had been expelled by God and sent to the moon or whatever. But that's something that Joseph Smith wrote. And you bring that up to Mormons, and they'll say, well, this, that, and the other. It's like, dude, can't you just admit it? That, like, we've been to the moon. There's no Quakers there. He was wrong. It's okay to be wrong, right? What's not okay is like when you can't admit it. Quakers living on the moon. I talked to you guys before, and the thing is, what I'm getting at is like, they all know it. They all know. You guys remember that South Park episode about the Mormons? Where, like Joseph Smith, he said, I got this golden book, and, I wrote everything down, and, here it is, and then, his friend's wife was like, well, if God really told, God sent an angel to tell him to write it again. So he wrote it again, and it was completely different, and that's all in their book. Like, the guy was full of shit, right? And all the Mormons, they all know it. Right? It is not a surprise to them, and yet they still believe. There's a reason for that. That's the power of community. Right? If you are in a community where you are loved and respected and treated well, and there's, common decency, it's like, man, it's hard to get out of. If you're in a community where you are constantly being told that you are right, and only this club we're the only right people, you're not going to leave. There's something in humanity that makes that happen. Now, atheists will look at that and be like, that's so stupid. It's like, atheists, you do the same thing. Al Gore got on television and said the polar ice caps are going to be melted by 2014. That's different. No, it's not. It's exactly the same thing. It's exactly the same thing. The Jehovah's Witness, the guy that started the whole thing, he said, Jesus is coming. You know what? I'm sick of this. Let me pull this up. I'm sorry, guys. Let me look this up, because I keep Jehovah's Witness prophecy did not come true. Sorry. Watchtower Society unfulfilled predictions. Watchtower Bible and Tract Society publications have made a series of predictions about Christ's second coming and the advent of God's kingdom, each of which has gone unfulfilled. Almost all of the predictions for 1878. Okay, so I was close the first time. So they predicted that Christ would return in 1878. And when he didn't, they changed it to 1881. When that didn't happen, they changed it to 1914. And when that didn't happen, they changed it to 1918. When that didn't happen, they changed it to 1925. Were later reinterpreted as confirmation of the eschatological framework of the Bible student movement and Jehovah's Witnesses, which many of the predicted events viewed as having taken place invisibly. Further expectations were held for the arrival of Armageddon in 1975, but resulted in later apology to members from the society's leadership. All right. Why does this happen? Right? Like, forget about the fact that it did happen. That's not my question, right? Like, who, what, where, when, why, and how. How does this happen? How is it that people can be, because Jehovah's Witnesses, that's a big organization. A lot of folks. A lot of folks. And you confront them with the harsh reality, like, you said this was going to happen, it didn't happen. Then you moved the date, and it didn't happen on that date either. And then you moved it again, it didn't happen on that date either. 5 different times. Till finally you came out with like, well, it did happen, it was just invisible. Okay. What causes that? There's something in everybody. Me, you, whatever, like we need something. You know what I mean? I know what it is, but like my hope is that you would find it, and that you would be aware that because of this need, it's like, look, we all get hungry, right? That's a universal experience. We all get hungry, starting at 3.5 hours from the time that we last ate, right? Your body's done metabolizing that food, and then, for some people, there's a period of time where they're just not thinking about food at all for hours, but whatever. Everybody gets hungry, right? Now you can come along and, somebody can come along and sell you a McDonald's cheeseburger, and you'll eat it because it's like, well, it's food, right? It's like, yeah, kind of. It's edible. It's biodegradable, like it's digestible, but I wouldn't exactly call it food. Here's a fun little fact for you. I went to Australia in 2004, 2005, and in Australia, if you order a quarter pounder, right, which is Royale, I think they call it down there. But if you order a McDonald's hamburger, by law, they have to put lettuce and tomatoes and onions on it, because of the amount of sugar that's in those buns is so high that, according to Australian law, because they have a Food and Drug Administration, just like America does. It's different, but it's the same thing. According to their laws, if you don't put all those vegetables on it, then you can't call it food, or you can't call it a meal. You have to call it a dessert. There's that much sugar in it. You know what I'm saying? There's something in all of us that must eat. We have to eat. You know what I mean? And so then, because of that, then there not only must there also be something to fulfill that desire, as C.S. Lewis said, but there also must be a right way to approach it and a wrong way. Now, you can go to McDonald's. When I get back to America, I'm going to McDonald's. Right? I'm gonna get a Big Mac and a supersized fries and a large Coke. That's what I'm gonna do. What I won't be doing is sitting there thinking that I'm doing a good thing for my body. What I won't be thinking is like, oh, this is a nutritionally wise decision. It's like, no, this is dessert. This is a treat that I'm going to pay for in about 10 minutes. Right? There's something in all of us that causes this to happen. And when you see these leftists, these people like this guy who's out there saying, well, you can't build a wall. You're racist, and you're just trying to hold poor people back, and whatever. It's like, dude, you're from a place that has a wall. That's different. No, it's not. If different, meaning it's on other sides of the planet, then sure. But we're not having a geographical discussion. We're having a national security discussion. And that's why it's not different. Because the issue is national security. Right? We just saw, another example is, there's that guy on the Young Turks. He's the cousin of Chunk Yogurt. Hassan Piker is his name. And the guy is a mook. Like, the guy dresses, he dresses like, it's like in those movies, like in the 80s, or TV shows in the 80s, and there would be that, that criminal informant that, when he's not telling the cops, what the bad guys are doing, then he's selling, stereo parts out of the back of his trunk. You know what I mean? And he's got, a flashy shirt on with, a fake gold chain, and, he dresses like an 80s caricature. It's weird. The guy's weird. And so he writes this tweet. He says, well, Ben Shapiro is, shorter than everybody. He's got less muscle density, and, less, all these. So does that mean that he's a woman? Because if you answer no, then you understand transgenderism. And it's like, somebody wrote back and said, yes, but does he have a vagina? You know what I mean? That's different. That's what people who have a losing argument say. That's different. No, it's actually the exact same. Ben Shapiro is a biological man who is shorter than you. He's shorter than most people because he's Jewish. And Jews tend to not come in the large variety. I used to work for a guy, his name was Art Schleck. He was a Jewish guy, and he was 6'5". He was huge, right? There's tall Jewish. What was that Jewish guy that used to play basketball? Big, tall guy. It's not that it's not that it doesn't happen. It's just for the most part, if you're talking about Jewish people, then you're talking about short people. And to point him out and saying, oh well, he's short, so he must be more female in nature. It's no, that has to do with genetics. He's short, and his parents were both short, and his grandparents were all short, and his children will be short. And if you go all the way back through as long as history will allow you to, all of the people in his family are short. because of things that are the same. You know what I mean? And I when I look at what's happening, I see the religion in it all. And I hope that you will too, and I hope that you can identify, like, not just, listen, this isn't an exercise in finger pointing for me. Like, I'm not looking at these people going, see, oh, look at what they do. It's like, no, like, please, like, you and I have to be aware that we have these tendencies. We all have them. We all have them, right? Jehovah's Witnesses, Mormons, Christians who believe that, like, if you just say this magic prayer, then you won't have to go to the bad place when you die. You know what I mean? There's a lot of Christians that when I bring that up, things get violent quickly. Things escalate quickly because it offends them. It hurts them. It's like, whoa, what are you saying that? You know what I mean? Like, they can't. You know what I mean? It's like, dude, I don't care. I'm not responsible for the condition of your soul. I'm not saying these things because, like, I'm trying to convert you to my way of thinking. It's like, I just don't think that you're getting, it's like, if I see you eating McDonald's every single day, I'm probably going to pull you aside and be like, okay, here's the thing. Like, your body needs fruits and vegetables every day, because that's where it gets the components for the acid that your body makes to break down food. And if you don't eat fruits and vegetables every day, then you're not properly processing your food. I don't like eating vegetables either, but you have to. And fruit and clean food that doesn't include, refined sugar. If I come to you and I say, hey, look, man, this McDonald's everyday thing, man, I don't think that you're living the promised life. I don't think you're living in the promised land as it applies to diet, nutrition. Right? And listen, look at me. I'm not preaching about, the quality of. I'll tell you one thing. Like, this is one time when I caught myself, like, at being, like, at the height of hypocrisy. Right? Like, as soon as I had this thought, I was shocked and offended at myself for having it, right? In my town, in East County, San Diego, Lakeside, Santee, El Cajon, that area, there's a guy, I never met him, but I must have seen this guy 100 times, right? He was just a guy that was around town. And he was one of these guys that had to have his entire lower jaw removed from chewing tobacco, right? Now, you would think that, like, when you see people like that, or people tell you, like, oh, I got jaw cancer from chewing tobacco, or oh, I got lung cancer from, smoking cigarettes. I remember looking at that person as a smoker, right? I remember looking at that guy, because he still chews tobacco, by the way. I remember looking at him thinking, why don't you just stop chewing tobacco? And as soon as that thought went through my head, it was immediately followed up by the reminder, like, oh, I can't quit smoking. And so, like, people who don't smoke, they look at me and they think, why don't you just stop smoking? Why don't you just stop doing that? Right? It's not that easy. I'm sure it is that easy, but it's not that easy. And here's this guy whose face is deformed now because they had to rip out his jaw, and he's still chewing tobacco. And I was looking at him going, why don't you just stop chewing tobacco? Oh, right. Like, I look at Jehovah's Witnesses and Mormons and weird Christians and whatever, and when I look at them, I think to myself, like, I wonder how much of this I'm guilty of. That thought frightens me. There's a passage in Jeremiah, and I'm sorry for Bible stuff, like I don't have my Bible open, but there's this passage in Jeremiah where God is talking to Jeremiah, and he says, go tell the prophets who prophesied falsely in my name. And he goes on to say, he said, these prophets, they run around saying, oh, I had a dream. And the prophets, they I didn't tell them to go anywhere, and yet they ran. And that's the actual language that's used, which is funny if you're familiar with like the structure of, the Jewish language. I didn't tell them to go anywhere, and yet they ran. I didn't tell them to say anything, and yet they said, "Thus saith the Lord, in my dream, I had this dream." And then God says, yeah, exactly, that's it. It was just a dream. You dreamt that up. You dreamt that up. I didn't tell you any of that stuff, says the Lord. And I remember when I read that for the first time, like, I'm sure I'd probably read it many times before it, but it just never hit me. But like the time that I read that, when it hit me, it's like, oh God, please don't let me be guilty of that. Like, please don't let me fall into the trap of believing a bunch of bullshit because like I thought it up and I was convinced of it. Let me only believe what's true. You know what I mean? Like that was a very frightening thought because, in that passage of scripture, the people that God's talking to are holy men. You know what I mean? They're holy men. They're prophets, And God's like, man, you people have been saying a bunch of stuff that I never told you to say. You've been going a lot of places I never told you to go. I didn't tell you any of that stuff. You dreamt that up. That's how you get that's how you get Jehovah's Witnesses. That's how you get Mormons. That's how you get I've told you guys before, like I love Catholics. Like I have Catholic friends that I take counsel from about scripture, like because Catholics are very adherent to the Word of God, and a lot of times almost every time they're always asking me like, so are you going to convert now? Are you going to become part of the church? And it's like, no, I won't do it. And the reason why is because you keep the thing that keeps me out of being a Catholic, because believe me, I actually kind of want to be a Catholic. But the reason that I don't and will not is because they keep saying, like, if you belong to this one true church, the church that Jesus started by using Peter, right? It's like, what? Hold on. The one true church is Jesus. Jesus is the church, and we are his body. Right? Because that's actually what that word church means. Like if you break down like the history of that word and what it actually means, like corpus. Corpse, body. The body of Christ. Right? And it's like, so what you're saying is that if I do not say your particular magic words, then I will not be acceptable to God Almighty. I will not be granted permission to commune with my Lord, my Savior, and my Redeemer. No, that's not true. You made that up. You made that up. That's a made-up thing. That's nowhere did Jesus say, like, okay, Peter, you're going to move to Italy. You're going to go to Rome. And there they're going to build you a basilica. And you're going to be the first pope. And from now on, all of this business about me dying for everybody and people coming to me and following my way, like, it's all going to go through you from now on. That's not what Jesus said. What he did say was like, here, Peter, I'm going to give you the keys to the kingdom. You know what I mean? And that's different, but that's different. But you see what I'm saying? I'm never going to be a Catholic. Not until like a cardinal or somebody says, okay, Pete, you know what? Like, you're right. Like, you don't have to be a Catholic to be in communion with Jesus Christ. We just would really prefer your company over here. We want exclusivity to your company. Then I'll be like, oh, okay, cool. Or whatever. You know what I mean? And when you see leftists saying like, well, we want all these poor people. We want all these poor people to come to America so that they can live a better life. It's like, well, wait a minute. I thought you just said that we're all a bunch of racists and bigots and homophobes and xenophobes and Islamophobes. Why would you want anybody to come here? America sounds like an awful place. Why would you want poor people to come here? Well, that's different. Right? You get these people, it's like, oh, I really believe in Bernie Sanders because, you know, he wants everybody, he wants the rich people to pay for everybody's medical bills. And it's like, well, what if, you know, what would happen if all of a sudden, say for example, there were no more rich people? Then who would pay for the medical bills? Well, you're just being ridiculous. It's like, no, I'm not. Financial collapses are a guaranteed outcome. We're going to face another gigantic financial collapse. It's inevitable. Historically, you know what I mean? It's going to happen. We could have like you know, Google and Facebook and Twitter are, you know, those people, Mark Zuckerberg and the tech giants and like these people, like they are a very wealthy class of people who've not had to work very hard for their money. But there's this class of people who could all be leveled. They could be thrown immediately into the poorhouse if this planet gets hit by another solar flare, an electromagnetic pulse from that big burning ball in the sky, which, by the way, is inevitable. That's going to happen. And it happens actually fairly regularly, but every 100 years or so, it belches out a gigantic burst. And the last time it happened, it wiped out everything that was made out of copper wiring. It wiped out everything, caused forest fires, a whole bunch of people died. Like, it's coming. And if it were to happen today, Mark Zuckerberg and, you know, Jack Dorsey and all those kind of people, they would be poor. Everybody at Google, they wouldn't have a job anymore. You know what I mean? Like, their job would be trying to figure out a way to rebuild, you know, the infrastructure of electricity. And I mean, what I'm saying is, like, those people can be laid waste. Then Bernie Sanders, who, pray tell, is going to pay for all these doctors to give out all this free, you know, medical attention that you're talking about? Well, that's different. Okay, you're religious. You're being religious. You believe that good virtue is forcing other people to pay for other people's medical attention. You're saying that what's good and virtuous is allowing all the poor people in the world to come to the United States because we are the rich people. And when you look at how economics works and, you know, how money works, it's like, no, that's not how it works at all. That's not how it works at all. If we could have eradicated poverty completely by just giving money out to poor people, we would have done that already. It doesn't work that way. As a matter of fact, when you give money to people who don't work, they hate you for it. They resent you for it. These people that are coming up out of Guatemala and Honduras and whatever, like, if they make it in the United States and we start giving them free stuff, the response will be, because it has to be, hatred and contempt for all of us. And if you don't believe me, look at the people who are on welfare right now. They hate rich people. That's how Bernie Sanders' message even got out. That's why the Democrats chose to allow Bernie Sanders to run. Because the Democrats are the ideology of poverty and greed and selfishness. And they go to their welfare recipient, you know, customers, and they say, look at these rich people that keep giving you all this free money. They're the bad people. You need to vote for me, and we're going to take all the money from those rich people. You know, the ones who are paying for your welfare right now. So I hope that I kind of tied all that together. It's like, look, be aware. Like, there's things in all of us. There's patterns in all of us where we believe things that are ridiculous, right? Like, look, if you believe ridiculous things, just own up to it. You know what I mean? Like, if you went to a Mormon and said, dude, Joseph Smith said that there were Quakers living on the moon. and his whole golden tablets thing, that's all a bunch of bullshit. If you met a Mormon that was like, yeah, you know what? It is all bullshit. But the thing is, man, is that these people, they really treat me nice. So I'm just gonna go along with it because I like being treated this way. I would look at that and say like, oh, fair enough. Fair enough. Fair enough, man. Like Jehovah's Witnesses, I don't think those people are happy. Like if you ever do hang out with Jehovah's Witnesses, those are a very arrogant people. It takes a great deal of energy to be a Jehovah's Witness because you have to be angry and indignant all the time if you're a Jehovah's Witnesses. But like, if you sat down with a Jehovah's Witness and said, dude, 1878, 1881, 1914, 1918, and 1925, come on, man. If they said, yeah, you know what, it's all bullshit, but the fact is like, listen, their girls are pretty, they have cookouts once a week, like, I just like hanging out with these people. I'd be like, okay, cool. That's cool. Very often people will ask me, like, so you believe that Jonah was in the belly of the whale? Do you believe that Joshua told the sun to stand still and it did it? I misquoted it the other day. It was like 8 hours or 4 more hours of sunlight. Listen, I'm aware of how ridiculous those things sound. But yes, I do believe it. I do believe it because it's enriching to my faith. That's why I believe it. I don't require that you believe it. This is for me. You know what I mean? But I don't walk around thinking like, no, the sun, Joshua told the sun to stand still and it did it. Like he's some sort of Jedi. I'm aware of how that sounds. I'm aware of how crazy that sounds. You know what I mean? I'm not going to sit here and try to make it sound like, oh, I'm intellectually superior. You know what I mean? Like you're a dumbass for not believing it. You know what I mean? Like you see what I'm saying? Like if you want to believe crazy, if you want to believe Al Gore and that the polar ice caps are going to melt by the year 2014, that's fine. That's fine. Just understand that it's like, okay, well, number one, 2014 has passed. Al Gore is a false prophet. He's a liar and he's making himself rich. You're free to believe him all you want. Right? Like atheists are big fans of evolution, right? The theory of evolution. How about you, atheist, if you're listening to me, which form of evolution? Huh? Which one? Do you like Darwinian evolution? Because, by the way, the only scientists that still believe in Charles Darwin's model of evolution are 8th grade science teachers. Nobody believes in Darwinian evolution. No respectable scientist believes in Darwinian evolution. So which evolutionary model do you believe in? Oh, well, GP, I don't actually know the name of it. That's right, because you're living on faith. Religious nut. You religious zealot. You're living on faith. You don't even know what it's called. You don't even know the names of your priests. You just believe it because if you don't, you're going to feel stupid. And nobody wants to feel stupid. Why did Jehovah's Witnesses believe? They continue to believe because if they stand up and say, listen, this is all bullshit, and I don't care about your weekly cookouts anymore, I'm leaving, all of their friends are going to point to them and say, you're stupid for not believing. It happened. It was just invisible. It took place. It took place invisibly. You're stupid. And that's atheist. That's what you're being told. Like if you don't believe in evolution, even though you have no idea what it is that you believe, you have absolutely no scientific, you don't have any scientific data. You don't even know which evolutionary model that you believe in. If you say that out loud to your friends, they'll say, you're stupid, and nobody wants to be told that they're stupid. Guess what? Here's a revelation for you. Those people that call you stupid, they don't pay your bills. If your kid gets sick, they're not going to come over to your house to comfort you. Right? If you're short on your mortgage, right? If you're depressed, Like, you see what I'm saying? Like, these people, like, you don't owe them anything. Why would you care if other people called you stupid? You know what I mean? This is your life. You are free to believe whatever it is that you want to believe. And by the way, you have a need to be religious. It's in you already. That's why you believe so strongly in evolution that you yourself cannot articulate. It's religion. And there's something behind that that's saying, like, no, there's a need to be filled here. There's something in you that it needs to be fed. Find out what that is. Find out what that is. Explore it. You only have this one shot. You explore that thing. And I say all this because it really is a shame that all of this religious zeal, because that's what these leftists are. They're zealots. They're religious zealots. And it's a shame that all of this energy and power is being pissed into the wind. They're just pissing it away. Donald Trump had sex with a porn star, consensual sex, and then he paid the lady to go away. And then she went away. Bill Clinton raped like 16 women. And ask a liberal about that. That's different. Yeah, it certainly is different. I'll give you that. Right? Donald J. Trump is bringing peace to North Korea. Barack Obama bombed Syria so severely that at one point they ran out of bombs. And he was given the Nobel Peace Prize. That's different. Okay. Everything's different. Everything's different until we're talking about your bullshit. Right? Everything's different. And this is true for all of it. Me too. You know what I mean? I'll most likely be guilty of this again at some point in the future. But everything, like when you're making arguments, like when somebody pins you into the corner, that's what you do. You say, well, that's different. You'll find anything. Like, if the exact same thing is happening in Israel that is trying to happen on the southern border, it's like, well, those are two very different places on the planet. So that's different. Let us strive to no longer be guilty of that aspect in all of us. All right? And tomorrow I'll do a show that is different than today, and I will talk to you then. Thank you so much for tuning in. If you want to support the show, it's at archadvocate.com, arch-advocate.com. Do not forget to hit the subscribe button, please. And if you're on YouTube, it's right there. Hit that button. Ding, ding, ding. Later.